So we're going to start with 221, and we're going to call it A, and that'll be 0 through 1 minute.
Okay, sure.
With the first one with 0 to 1 minute. And can we turn up the volume just, I mean, there's part of it that the noise of the airplane is a little bit loud, but to be able to pick up the noise. Keep an eye on it. And then the second one is from 2:50 to 3:20, 30 seconds.
You, 221 is in evidence, already in evidence.
So may I play the third one then, and then we
Yes.
can take the break?
Yes.
Thank you. That would be at 9.
You can play all of it if you'd like. That's fine, thank you.
I think that'll torture the jury if
Okay.
I do that, Your Honor. 9:30 to 10, just 30 seconds more.
This fucking idiot in case you get sick.
All right, and you can be changing gears after that, or do you have any more questions for this issue?
No, I think this would be fine
Okay,
for a break.
all right, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and take our morning break then. Just do not do any outside research and don't discuss the case with anybody. All right, thank you. And again, ma'am, since you're still testifying, don't discuss your testimony with anybody at this point, okay? All right, so let's just come back at, let's make it 11:42. All right? 11:42.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, we ready for the jury then?
Yes, Your Honor,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, you can see your next question.
Thank you, Your Honor. Amber, following the plane ride, what did you do once you arrived, once you landed in LA?
I called for a car to pick me up, met me at the private airport, and I left. I got straight off the plane as soon as we touched down. Johnny had been saying what he would do to me once we got on the ground, and I didn't know how long this cycle would last, so I wanted to just get out of there. I went to a hotel and called my friends to join me, which was my coping strategy at the time.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to take a look at Defendants 204. Did you reach out to...
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay and bleeding.
Your Honor, I would direct Your Honor's attention to the first one in blue and the third one in blue, and I would say present sense impression and the state of mind at that time.
All right, if you want to approach.
Yes. All right, let's go to 205. Defendants 205. And this is a communication between you and Rocky Pennington, your best friend, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Objection, hearsay.
You want to approach? 205 with redactions is in evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. May we publish to the jury? Thank you.
It is.
So Rocky on this is Rocky Pennington, your best friend, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And when did you send this communication to Rocky?
Once I had touched down in LA,
Okay. And you said, I'm not good. What did you mean by that?
that I needed help, that I was scared. I was scared of what had just happened to me. I was scared of what was going to happen to me. I was scared if I left him. I was scared if I didn't. And I needed help. I just needed support. I didn't feel safe going home. I still had my place in Orange. He had keys. I was scared.
Did you text your mother and your father about this incident?
Objection, hearsay.
If you want to,
What, if any, communication did you have with your mother or your father following this incident?
Objection, hearsay.
sustain that objection.
Let's go to defendants 222, and Your Honor, I suspect we're going to be back up at the
All right, you want
bench
to
on
keep
this
on
one.
approach? That's fine. Thank you.
What, if any, communications did you have with Kate James following the Boston plane incident?
Objection, hearsay.
Your Honor, if we go to 224,
Okay. 224.
my argument would be business records exception.
All right, you want to come forward? We can do it.
So what, if anything, did you do the evening of the 24th of May?
I reached out to friends and family, asked for support,
Objection, hearsay.
Sustained.
and surrounded myself with them with that.
What, if anything, did you do for Lily Rose's birthday?
That's why we had gone back to LA. Johnny was sick after having passed out on the plane. So I took her to dinner. We went to Benihana's. It was, again, put on my smile, took her out, tried to make her feel loved, and celebrated for her birthday. And then I booked a flight out to New York, to go back to New York, obviously without Johnny.
I'm going to ask you to now turn to 225. And Your Honor, I'm going to be referring to the last two blue spots on that page with the state of mind. Mental condition.
All right.
It doesn't, it's still hearsay, Your Honor. May we approach?
Yeah, you want to approach? I just want-
I'm going to ask you to turn now to 228.
Your Honor, we're going to object on hearsay.
First line, Your Honor,
Okay.
is all I understand in Your Honor's ruling, but I think
All right. You want to come forward? That's fine.
So tell us please tell the jury what you did then over that night, the next day, and at the hotel.
I cried a lot, tried to surround myself with my friends, and resolved to leave him. I felt powerless. Nothing I did made a difference. You know, on the plane, I was so careful.
Objection, non-responsive.
Please just tell us what you did, and you can tell how you feel, but don't go backwards, okay?
I resolved, tried to, the strength to commit to leaving him. I knew I had to. I knew nothing else would make a difference. So I got myself back to LA. New York. And started going to Al-Anon meetings every day. It's a support group for people who love addicts and alcoholics.
What, if any, communications did you have with Stephen Deuters?
Objection, hearsay.
Your Honor, let me ask it this way. What, if any, communications did you have with Mr. Deuters communicating on behalf of Mr. Depp?
Objection, hearsay.
I would say agency on that, Your Honor.
You have to lay a foundation for that.
Okay. All right, let's go to 229A. And could you, without saying what the content is, can you tell us who this text message is with?
Johnny's assistant.
What's his name?
His name is Stephen Deuters.
Okay. And what, if any, communication were you having with him following the Boston plane incident?
Objection, hearsay. May we approach?
All right, Ms. Mills?
Did you communicate at all with Mr. Depp in the days following the Boston plane incident?
Yes, I did.
Please tell the jury about those communications.
I heard from him directly. I also heard from him through his assistants who were texting for him.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
I'll sustain the objection.
You're not allowed to testify about the text messages with his assistant, but can you tell the jury about your communications with Mr. Depp?
Okay. It's kind of confusing because he was texting through them.
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll sustain the objection. I'll strike that from the record, and you'll just regard that
understand.
testimony. Please answer the question.
Just confine it to the communications you had with Mr. Depp, please.
That he was sorry and told me that he was in a blackout. He didn't remember everything, but what he did remember, he was ashamed of. He begged me to forgive him. Said he understood and forgave me if I never wanted to speak to him again. He texted me at one point, and then I didn't respond right away, and he texted me again that he understood that I had made my decision to move on and good luck, and I was better for it, and then continued to contact me. I spoke to him when I was in New York on the phone, and he said that he was he had a chip, or that he was going to meetings, that he I think at the time mentioned another celebrity that was kind of advising him on sobriety, or not advising him, but encouraging him. And he was saying, well, look, me and this person, we even went to a meeting. I've got 3 days sober, 4 days sober, and that was the last time. The monster will never come back. Monster will never come back. And because it felt like it felt so much worse than it had ever been before. And because I had, I went to New York and I was trying to get my strength to leave him, I actually thought that it kind of would be the turning point. I thought I had effectively...
Objection, Your Honor, non-responsive.
Overruled. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. Go ahead. Please continue.
I thought things would change.
Okay. Did you draft any kind of email to Mr. Depp to express your emotions and how you felt about all this?
Objection, hearsay.
Well, let's go. I'll lay the foundation, Your Honor. Let's go to Defendants 239.
239.
Objection, hearsay, Your Honor.
And I would say both present sense impression and definitely state of mind, Your Honor.
I'll sustain the objection.
All right. So did you ultimately communicate to Mr. Depp what you first drafted up in an email without saying anything about what's in the email?
That calls for hearsay, Your Honor.
I'm just asking if she did.
No, what she said.
Correct.
Okay. Overruled.
Did you communicate to Mr. Depp what you had drafted in the email? And you don't get to say what you said?
Yes.
Okay. And what, if any, response did Mr. Depp have to your sending that email to him?
He came to New York to fight for the relationship, for me, to prove that he was sober and he was committed to changing. I believed he was embarrassed and sorry. He said he was, and I believed him. So I took him back, or I got back with him on the condition that he would uphold his promise to do the treatment, to do the full detox, clean up, and never go back.
So I'm going to take you now up to the June through August 2014 time frame. And I think you testified earlier, and others have as well, that Mr. Depp brought in Dr. Kipper and his group, correct?
Yes, he did.
Could you please describe for the jury what those next few months were like?
All of a sudden, this doctor gets brought on that we had been talking about. I had heard this name before. And all of a sudden, this doctor, Dr. Kipper, who apparently wrote a book on addiction and was this doctor was going to be the solution, the cure, and he got brought on board, and all of a sudden, the plan was that this team would be involved in Johnny's recovery. So it felt real, it felt serious, I felt like protected. I had already by this point heard a million times, it seems like, promises to get clean and sober, but this felt like a change. And they were going to come to Boston and start working with Johnny, and the plan was to keep Johnny on the same level of drugs that he was on since he was filming. They needed him to finish filming the movie, so he was going to be maintained with his with prescription pills, including the painkillers. And the plan was he would obviously abstain from alcohol completely and all other drugs like weed and coke. And then when he finished filming, the plan was to do
Objection,
the
Your
full
Honor,
detox.
hearsay. And lack of foundation.
I don't understand what the objection, I don't think it is. I think she was just explaining the context there. I don't think she was saying
Well, we
what
could
somebody
lay a foundation how she knew, but it's fine.
How did you know that?
I was involved in the conversations
Okay. Please
with the
continue.
doctors and with his sister.
Objection,
And
Your Honor,
nurse.
that's still hearsay.
All right, I'll
Okay,
sustain the
that-
objection.
That part is. So what happened next as a result of these communications without saying what the communications were?
A nurse came to Boston where Johnny was. I just would come for short periods of time in between, on weekends from filming until I wrapped my movie, which I did, I think in May, if I am not mistaken. And then I went to Boston and I was there and saw a nurse was flown out to Boston, Debbie Lloyd, and I believe Kipper came out too. And they put Johnny on a bunch of new medications, which they shared with me, told me about.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Well, we have to be careful about what other people told you, okay? But you can testify to what you know, okay? So what happened then?
I saw his medications change. I know the amount that Johnny told them he was on was so that they could maintain him for the filming, meaning not make a drastic change in the amount of painkillers he was taking. But his behavior, his whole personality changed drastically. He would be speaking to me And at the time I was staying in Boston with him, having wrapped my movie, and he would, in mid-sentence, mid-word, fall asleep. One time I was sitting across from him, and he would come in and out of sleep, of being awake, or completely what appeared to be asleep while talking to me, and he had a cigarette in his hand, and, Johnny constantly smoked, and he just sat the cigarette, as he fell asleep, while speaking, down on his leg. They're hand-rolled cigarettes. They don't stay lit very long, thankfully, but, it was things like that, and I didn't understand it. Even though I had experience with drug use in my family, I hadn't seen anything like this. And it was so dramatic, the change, that I was trying to figure out with the nurses and doctors what happened, what changed, how we could explain the change and what medications were causing it. I knew there were new medications involved, so I was constantly worried and in communication, and Johnny's behavior got worse and worse, more of this passing out, nodding off, waking up in the middle of the night, screaming, waking up in the middle of the night, sometimes crying, and the emotions would change from one to the next, like by the second. I remember we were on a long weekend when he was filming in Boston, and we went to this like a resort retreat hotel, and he was just bawling. It broke my heart. There was just a lot of changes, and I really didn't know. I felt so bad for him, and I thought maybe it was just what Kipper had introduced into the regime, the medications. But what I found out in that time is that he was taking about double the amount.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Was this your observation?
I saw it.
Okay, overruled.
Thank you. Please continue.
It was taking about double the amount that he told them was his normal when he started the process with the doctors. So after a few, it's, I think, months of going, what is wrong? And, turning him over when he vomited at night or checking his pulse. There were, all of a sudden, when I realized the amount was about double, I realized then he had been lying to them and me about the amount so that he could get extra high before he had a detox. But that I can't it was such an agonizing weeks, months. It was so agonizing. I don't know how long it lasted, but I was so concerned for this person, and he had just been doubling up his meds because he didn't.
So, Michelle, can you pull up 1092, Defendant's Exhibit 1092? Amber, did you take this picture of Mr. Depp?
I did.
Your Honor, I'm going to move the admission of Defendant's Exhibit 1092.
All right, any objection?
No objection.
All right, 1092 in evidence. You can publish. Thank you.
And can you describe what's depicted here and why you took this picture?
This was during that time when the prescriptions that he was on in the doubling up of the opiates got so bad that he was like this just throughout the day, off and on, and then he would take Adderall and he'd be really animated and ready to go, and then it would be this again, and it was so erratic and it changed so quickly, and I naively now really did not understand what was going on. I deeply cared about this human's well-being.
All right.
And it was very confusing and scary.
So did there come a time then that Mr. Depp went into detox for Roxycodines or whatever they're called?
Yes, when he finished filming, the plan was to do the detox, and that's what we did.
And when was that?
That would have been early August of 2014. I believe we left. We were there for, I think, a week to 10 days, 8th through the 18th, more or less.
And we've heard some testimony about this, but can you please describe for the jury what took place during this detox on the Bahama Islands in August 2014?
It was, for the first few days, okay, peaceful. The nurse, and then later nurse and doctor, were staying on a different part of the island. A few minutes drive by ATV, like 10, 15 minute, by one of those ATV vehicles. But we communicated via walkie-talkie and occasionally through text. And it was okay at first, and then the behavior, then it just really wasn't okay. It was up, down, he'd be mad at me, then he was wanting a hug, he cried a lot, and then he wanted to have sex a lot, which is just not like Johnny at all. And it was just like that. It was just up, down, mood, and it was like I felt like a constant was catering to the mood, that whatever he was going through at the time. I was just trying to adapt and kind of roll with it and provide support. I was taking his blood pressure. I was on a schedule and constant communication with the nurses about delivering the meds, giving him his meds at a certain time. I was just trying to take care of him. And a few days in, I guess the effects of the detox really started to change. And it went from this erratic behavior up and down to just really down or mad. He would burst into anger at me, yelling at me. I crossed the table. I walked away from it at the table. I crossed the table in a certain way, and he screamed at me about that and tried to overturn this table. Luckily, it was bolted down to the deck, but I remember him shaking it and screaming. And at a different point, he was really calm and sweet and thanking me. And then another, he looked like he was balancing out, and we had a conversation, and he was saying he wanted to quit the detox, and he couldn't do it anymore. And I was trying to find the language to encourage him. I was trying to remind him how much he wanted that, how much he had told me he wanted that, how much I was reminding him, he told me all the time, I saved his life, and he wouldn't be doing this without me. And I was telling him these things, and at one point in our conversations, I told him about how...
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Please try to continue without what you said, please.
I said something to him, and he got so angry at me, he slapped me across the face. But he did it while crying. It was the weirdest thing. He was crying, saying no woman had ever embarrassed him like that. No woman had ever made him feel like that. I heard that for the rest of the trip too, just on repeat. And I felt bad. I feel bad. Still feel bad. But, I didn't want to make him feel embarrassed. That's not what I wanted to do. It just was in over my head. I don't know how to detox someone. I don't know how to help them through that. And I shouldn't have been there. I don't...
Why were you there?
Because he asked me to. And I didn't know that was a phenomenally dumb idea. I don't know why why the doctors and nurses didn't tell me not to. I had no idea what that was going to look like or be like. And it was hell. We're on an island. I'm trying to take care of him, and he was hallucinating. And
Objection, Your Honor, non-responsive.
Overruled.
Screaming at me for things that I said when I didn't say I hadn't said anything. I would tell him, Johnny,
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Well, I think in the context, Your Honor, it's not offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted.
What's it for?
It's just telling the context of...
I'll sustain the objection. Thank you.
Please continue and just say what he says and what he did and what your observations were.
He was accusing me of having a man in the house with me. We were in a single, in a cabin. It's basically one room with a closet and a bathroom. I mean, there's nowhere to hide, really. I mean, there's a closet and a bathroom. And he, at one point, told me that I was hiding somebody in the house. Another point, he was communicating with someone not in the room. It would yell at me and then yell at someone else. It wasn't there. And I tried to ask for what I should do. I didn't know what to do. It was terrifying and strange. The whole week was...
So after you left Bahamas and finished with the detox there, where did you go from there?
We, meaning Debbie Lloyd, Dr. Kipper, and I and Johnny, we flew back to LA, and he was going back and forth between saying he wasn't going to continue to, he was committed. It was back and forth. Everything was up, down, erratic, like changing every second. And we got to LA, and Debbie and Kipper communicated with me. I won't say what they said, but I decided it would be probably in everyone's best interest if I went away to a hotel. Johnny put me up in this room in this hotel while he finished the process of detox in LA, and I had my friends out with my girlfriends there to support me as per usual.
So Michelle, can you pull up 272, please? And after you both returned to LA, did Mr. Depp communicate with you by text while you were apart, while he was finishing the detox?
Yes, he did.
Your Honor, I'd like to move the admission of 272.
Any
Defendant's
objection?
Yes, Your Honor, to the first message. Excuse me, Your Honor, to the second.
You mean the response?
Right.
Okay.
It's just present sense of impression, but I'm understanding Your Honor's
Yeah.
rulings on that.
Okay.
So
Did you want to redact it?
can we
That's fine.
redact that second message? All right, Your Honor,
All right. Any objection to 272 redacted?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
All right. 272 is in evidence, and we will publish.
And Amber, I'm going to show you now what is Defendant's Exhibit 272, and this is on August 20, 2014. It's a text message from Mr. Depp to you. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And just so that we can highlight here, he's calling you. He says, just to let you know that I'm fine, my angel. I miss you, of course, but this was the right thing to do to speed up the process. I love you more than life. Yours, Steve. Do you see that?
I do.
So what, if any, expressions was Mr. Depp giving you at this point that he was angry with you ever having to help participate with the detox or to be on the island or anything along that line?
Objection, form, compound.
I'll allow it, but just for trying to keep the record clear, 272 has already been entered into evidence without that redactions, and there wasn't any objection. So I would wish if I could have both sides to keep track of their evidence. It's not my job to keep this.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just got a note to that effect. So
Okay, so 272 is in evidence without, you can clear the redaction and publish it. It's really the party's responsibility to take care of the record, not mine.
my apologies on that one, Your Honor. All right.
All right, and I overruled the objection, so she can answer the question.
Thank you, Your Honor.
sorry, can you remind me what the question was?
Yes,
That's fair.
that's fair. I said, what, if anything, did Mr. Depp say about that you were torturing him on the island and he didn't want you there?
Very confusing for me to hear that, because even though he was hallucinating and angry at me at various moments when he would have these kind of episodes, I did nothing but try to take care of him. I'm not a nurse. I did my best to support him. And he thanked me. He thanked my mom. He thanked my dad. And told me, of course, I saved his life. That he wouldn't be able to make this change without me. And that this process was horrible and hard on him and us and me. But that he was so thankful that I was there for him.
Okay, we can take this down now, Michelle, thank you. And I'm going to take you up to September, October of 2014. Do you remember filming Magic Mike 2 in that time frame?
Yes, I do.
And what, if any, connections did you have with Mr. Depp in that time frame?
Well, I bargained with him about me doing the role. He told me he would call the actors. It was a mostly male cast. But I bargained with him.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Don't say what you said, just say what he said, okay?
Mm-hmm. He reluctantly kind of agreed to me working on this movie or taking a job. He was filming a different movie in London at the time. I wasn't going to play a sexualized character. I wore no makeup or minimal makeup in the movie. No sexy clothing. No kissing scenes. No sex scenes. So I went and did that film in October of 2014 in Georgia while he finished his movie in London. And then at some point he came out to pick me up in Georgia and was there for my last day or two of filming.
I'm going to ask you to turn to, Michelle, can you bring up 310, please? Defendants 310. Did you have communications with Mr. Depp about auditioning for another role in this time frame?
Objection, Your Honor. I'm going to object to the exhibit as hearsay.
I'm not sure who's in the text exchange.
It is a text exchange, Your Honor, so, but the green is Mr. Depp. And the one I'm most focused on is on the second page, Your Honor, the top.
The green bubble on the second page?
Yes.
All right, so just that text?
Based on Your Honor's rulings, yes.
Any objection to that text?
No, thank you, Your
Okay,
Honor.
if we can get that redacted.
And while that's being redacted, Amber, let me ask you, what, if any, anything was Mr. Depp saying to you in this time frame, we're talking November 2014, about you not working anymore or not taking on any more work or auditioning?
Objection, Your Honor, compound.
They're all the
And
same
leading.
subset.
Overruled, I'll allow it.
Thank you.
Johnny was angry with me for working. I had finished my job and I needed to eventually find another job, meaning a movie, to work on, and he was furious at me for, he found, like, we call them sides, they're just pieces of an audition, pages, and he found something that had been sent to me to consider auditioning for, and he blew up at me for, yeah, I think what he said to me is that I didn't tell him, that I didn't ask him, and that because he didn't know about that audition that I hadn't done yet, that I had been hiding it, and was furious at me. I ended up not doing that audition, I believe. Well, there was a few, one or two in that time that I did audition for, and one or two that I didn't.
I'm going to ask you now to take a look at what is Defendant's Exhibit 310. Do you recognize this email from Mr. Depp?
Yes, it's a text.
Your Honor, I'm going to move for the admission of...
It's in evidence, 310.
Oh, okay.
It's evidence with redactions, so I published it.
Please tell the jury about this text and the context.
This was Johnny's response to me apologizing for having an audition.
Okay. Thank you. All right, now I'm going to stay in November of 2014. And did there come a time that Mr. Depp told you that he understood that you were not going to accept any more jobs, that you were going to stop working?
Well, Johnny said this to me in an argument, in a fit of rage, is the best way I can describe it, and kind of alluded to me having agreed to not work anymore, which if you don't know me, is preposterous. There's no way I would agree to that. Although I did make concessions and gave up a lot of
Objection,
these
Your Honor,
fights.
hearsay.
That wasn't...
Overruled.
Thank you. Please continue.
So he reached out to other people and to me to that effect, furious at me for taking meetings. There was one in particular I wanted, one meeting I wanted to take because it was a project in development with a sci-fi writer, and I remember I wanted to take that. These things were just they were just constant fights, but in between them, when things were good between Johnny and I, he would be, he would word it to me like, I'm trying to look out for you. You say that you don't want to be objectified, but you're doing it to yourself. But at first it was because I dressed a certain way or had sex scenes, and then it just got more narrow and more narrow and more narrow what I could do without being the blame for why the industry, Hollywood, the entertainment industry, was putting me in a box and objectifying me. So it became my fault. I mean, I believed it. I believed it. I adopted a lot of these changes myself, not because Johnny, said you have to do it this way, but because of all the other things that he said and did, I eventually found myself making decisions about my own career, about how I dressed, about how I wore my hair, how I presented, where my eyes were cast when I walked into a room. And I believe those were my own decisions.
Amber, did there come a time in November of 2014 that you engaged in some couples counseling with Dr. Cowan and you and Mr. Depp?
we attempted to. I had stopped seeing my therapist at the in 2014. I couldn't sustain seeing her and be in the relationship with Johnny, and I chose Johnny. Eventually, Dr. Kipper introduced me to his close friend, Dr. Cowan. And I met with Dr. Cowan and agreed to let them share communication about my care, my treatment, both what I said to Cowan and what I said to Dr. Kipper, who had become my physician as well. He also put a nurse on me that would be my travel companion, and that travel companion would keep tabs on me and report to Dr. Kipper, who reported everything to Johnny.
Objection, hearsay. Calls for speculation.
I'll sustain the objection.
Okay. Okay. So tell us about the couples therapy in November 2014.
So Dr. Cowan, this man who is friends with Kipper, who's treating me, agreed to see Johnny and I together. And I don't know how many minutes of that went on before Johnny stormed out, knocked something off the table on his way out, and rolled a joint in the bathroom before storming out of the office, slamming the door.
All right. So I'm going to take you up to December of 2014, and specifically December 17, 2014. And I'm going to ask you to take what, if anything, do you recall of an incident with Mr. Depp relating to Clive Barker?
He was the sci-fi writer that I liked. Well, fantasy sci-fi writer. I kind of had a dream project based on a book that I loved of this author. He's just a weirdo genius, artist, writer. And I had a meeting with him through another director about a piece of property he wanted to make into a movie. And I just remember I believe we were at the ECB. It was in December of 2014 when Johnny found out that I had this meeting scheduled, and was furious at me. Accused me of having this plan to sleep with this. He was mad that I was taking the meeting at this man's house, but the man was very ill, like terminally ill, and not able to leave his bed or his home. He was under home care and very ill. And the person who was introducing us explained to me how we had to meet, and I did. And that was a big problem for Johnny. At first, it was that he was concerned about my safety, and I thought that was sweet. And there is something that's I thought was sweet and romantic about that, but combined with the drinking, it was not very long before I was being accused of full on having this other plan to sleep with the writer in order to get this part that I was already being, basically offered to develop. And it was just this, he switched from he was accusing me of having this ulterior motive with this director, the director having it with me, then with this writer. And the important thing I can try to get across in this moment is that nothing I said, no amount of explaining, apologizing, accepting, not accepting, agreeing to not go, nothing worked. Nothing changed. How mad he was at me and constantly telling me I had done something wrong to deserve what was happening. Until, of course, he takes it too far, hits me too hard, breaks too many things in the house, and then leaves, which was the pattern. And he would leave and not have to deal with the cleanup. He never had to deal with the cleanup. He never had to deal with the destruction or see me or the house that he had destroyed. He never had to deal with my face the next day. He would just go. I called it splitting. He just split. And eventually, I'd get an apology of some kind, or I would get an offer to have him come over. He would offer to come over and talk or give me my peace or give me my goodbye. And in many ways, I found myself accepting that, knowing it was kind of false pretense, because I too wanted to resolve it. I didn't want him to think I was sleeping with this sci-fi writer. I didn't want him to think that I was this slut he said I was all the time. I mean, part of me really wanted to believe that he didn't mean those things, and I wanted to get to that part of him that would tell me he didn't mean what he said and that he was acting this way because he was messed up, you know. And the cycle would repeat, I suppose.
Was there any physical violence on or around December 17, 2014?
Yes is the answer to your question. I don't really remember what happened in that fight. I remember more afterwards. I remember how apologetic he was for it. I remember him telling me he took it too far. I remember him saying he'd never do it again. And I remember wanting to get to Christmas. You know, Christmases are hard, probably for everyone. And I remember it was close enough to Christmas that I was tired. And I wanted to be in a I wanted to be in a kind, gentle, peaceful state for Christmas. I didn't want to go through a breakup at this time. I didn't want to, you know, that's what I remember of that time.
Let's bring up Defendant's Exhibit 321, Michelle. And this is on 12/17/2014. Is this a text message exchange between you and Mr. Depp?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, I'd like to move the admission of Defendants 321.
Any objection?
Sorry, Your Honor, just a quick minute. Your Honor, no objection.
All right, 321 in evidence. You can publish it, please.
Amber, I'm just going to turn your attention to this. This is an email exchange between you and Mr. Depp, and he says, I am truly sorry to have upset you to the degree that I have. I couldn't be more sorry for yet again ruining your day. I do, of course, take your generosity, your selflessness, your affection, and your sweet doting deeply into my heart, and I think that I've been reciprocal. Agony is never the answer to any equation or occasion, nor is rage. Please know that my apology is sincere and solid, and as stupid as it sounds, I hope your meeting with Clive Barker is excellent. You see that?
Yes.
Okay, and then you respond, thank you for your words, and you indicate you just left Betty Sue's, that's his mother?
Yes, and I then had a glass of wine with my former agent, Megan.
Okay.
That afterwards, she encouraged.
Objection, hearsay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All right, and we can take that down. Let's bring up 325, Defendants 325, please. And this is an email exchange the following day, 12/18/2014, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, Your Honor, I'd move the admission of Defendants 325. It's already in. Oh, it's already in, Your Honor. My apologies. We'll get that figured out at lunch.
With what redaction?
It's already in, so.
It's been in evidence. Does anybody over there have the list of evidence that's already in evidence?
Yes.
Okay, we're making sure.
The redaction.
Ours indicates it is. It's in.
It's in evidence.
Without redactions, Your Honor?
It is, it was redacted. I don't know what
Well,
it was redacted to.
The redactions don't.
Is that's how it is in evidence, Mr. Murphy? We can check, we'll check our copy.
Thank you. It's fine, Your Honor. We've confirmed.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right,
right.
it can be published.
Thank you.
That's- You can't see it on your screen? All right, we'll take care of that during the break. If you could just share it there. Oh, get it? Okay, thank you. All right, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So this is from Mr. Depp, right? Says, it's a way, I've let it go too far, went too far. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
I always regret it when I jump, or worse, when you jump. I don't want to be conditioned to continue that behavior. Therefore, I'll put in heavy work with shrink. What is your understanding of what he's referring to with shrink?
Psychologist.
Objection calls for speculation.
Did you have an understanding of what he meant?
Yes, I knew exactly what he meant.
And what did he mean?
Shrank is shrink.
What did he call shrink?
Johnny called shrinks, meaning of psychologist, therapist, shrank.
Okay. I'm sorry for being less, for your disappointment in me, for my behavior. I'm a fucking savage. You see that?
Yes.
All right. Gonna lose that, gonna lose that. The devil is all around, right? Now, you respond to this, and of course, before you go there, and he says, I am well aware I should have been bigger at the moment, and that it will never again manifest in negative experiences. It can be done. What a killer concept to visualize. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
And you respond, I love you, I miss you already, correct?
That's right.
Right. And what, if anything, is that consistent with the cycle that you have described?
Well, the language he used after particularly violent episodes was savage, monster, devil. That's what we ended up both calling his other side, the side of Johnny that would do and say unbelievably horrible things. It was very different from the other Johnny. That was, in my opinion, exact opposite. And this is typical of the apologies that I would get when he took it too far physically. I was encouraged because I thought it meant he understood that he could really hurt me. Sometimes I didn't think he understood how much he could hurt me physically, I mean. So after this, I had a visible bruise. I don't remember where, but I remember what other people, well, I can't say that, what they said, so. Anyway, and I, in these fights, would try to stand up for myself. By December 2014. I was pushing back. I'd push him off of me. I'd try to hit his hands away. I tried to always get back up, which almost always made it worse. Always seemed to provoke him. But I tried. And worse, I would yell at him. I'd scream at him. I'd call him ugly names. So ashamed of the names we'd call each other. It was awful. It was awful. We both got into that pattern. It was so, I felt so angry that this was happening to me, and it just felt so unfair, you know? It felt like nothing I could do, felt like nothing I could do would change the sobriety patterns, felt like nothing I could do would stand up for him, and nothing I did made him stop hitting me. Nothing. So, you know, I tried for over a year, maybe 2, of just not responding physically, not responding verbally, just staring at him. I tried to freeze. I tried to go to a different place. I would try then lashing out verbally. I would try to threaten that if he hit me again, that I would call the police. You know, the police were called several times, but I tried to do everything. I even threatened to leave him, you know, and tried to leave him, and nothing was working. And I think by this point in our relationship, we're both saying awful things to each other, screaming at each other, and unfortunately, when Johnny would start hitting me, he'd just win. I don't know how else to describe it.
This might be a good
Okay, that's
time for
good.
the lunch break.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll go ahead and take our lunch break at this time until 2 o'clock. Please do not discuss the case or do any outside research, okay? Thank you. All right. And again, ma'am, just don't discuss your testimony with anybody this time, okay? All right, thank you. So 2 o'clock? All right,
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Okay, are we ready for the jury? Yes. Okay. All right, thank you. All right, maybe seated. Your next question?
Thank you, Your Honor. Michelle, can you bring up Defendant's Exhibit 236, which has already been admitted?
Thank you.
Amber, I'm jumping back to the Boston plane incident just for a moment. We had a lot of different text and a lot of exchange, but I just wanted to point out to you, this text message is from Mr. Depp to you, correct?
Yes, it is.
And this is on 5/25, the day after the Boston plane incident?
That's correct.
All right, and he is saying, once again, I find myself in a place of shame and regret. Of course, I am sorry. I really don't know why or what happened, but I will never do it again. I want to get better for you and for me. I must. My illness somehow crept up and grabbed me. I can't do it again. I can't live like that again. I know you can't either. And I will for both of us, starting today. I love you. Again, I'm so sorry, so sorry. I love you and feel so bad for letting you down. Do you see that?
I do.
And was that the message that you testified to, that he gave you?
Yes.
Okay. All right, now I'm going to jump back to where we left off. We're up in January of 2015. Danish girl, you're filming in London, is that correct?
Yes, that would have been January 2015.
Okay. Now, we heard some testimony from Isaac Baruch earlier about a telephone call that you had with Mr. Depp. Do you recall that call?
I do.
Can you please tell the jury and remember to tell them what Mr. Depp was saying on that call? And you can give the back. I didn't mean to cut you off on the context. Go ahead.
Is it okay to... The nature of the conversation was pleasant? Friendly, fine, normal. And then Johnny stopped making sense with this. Like, he'd start a sentence and then trail off and act confused when I would be confused. And that pattern kind of increased pretty dramatically in a short amount of time. And I was in a hotel room in London speaking to him in Los Angeles. And the phone, what I assumed, cut off. I thought it was a connection issue. And I remember getting out of bed and walking into the bathroom to get something, and I was redialing him. And in the span of that short amount of time we had been disconnected, it was minutes, not even minutes. I called him back thinking the phone had been disconnected, and he answered and he said, how could you tell me that? How could you say that to me? Who the fuck is he? Who the fuck is he? And he asked me that a few times, and I was so confused. I didn't understand what he was talking about. I expressed that to him. He says, "Who is the guy, the one in New York that you're fucking?" And it was such a bizarre conversation because it had already started to feel like he was not making. It was almost as if he was confused by what sentence he had started by the time he got to the end of it. And then all of a sudden he tells me that I have just told him that I had a boyfriend or a lover in New York, and he's accusing me of having just told him about it, which was crazy. To me, not only was that not accurate, I would never have communicated with him like that. More or less called him on the phone to do it and then call him back and wonder what the connection issue was. It was just the most bizarre thing. But he was so worked up, incoherent, and accusing me of having had this conversation with him. Eventually the line drops out, and I spoke to the person who picked up the phone.
Okay. And how did that end?
I no longer spoke to Johnny. I probably can't say what the person told me.
Are we talking about Isaac Baruch?
Yes.
Okay. So without saying what he said, you had a brief conversation with Mr. Baruch, and that was the end of the call?
I did. It was my understanding Johnny was passed
Objection,
out.
hearsay.
Okay.
Mrs. Steen?
All right. January 25, 2015. Please tell, it's the premiere of Mordecai, correct? Did you accompany Mr. Depp to Tokyo for the premiere of Mordecai?
I did. When I was...
Please tell the jury about that trip.
Well, I had just started to pick out the wedding dress right before that trip, and plans were moving for us to get married shortly after this trip. So we took this trip to promote his movie. I went with him. We got in an argument in the hotel room, and I said, I don't remember what I said to him, but I said something snotty to him that provoked him. It provoked him, and when I walked into the hallway, arm and slammed me up against the hallway wall, and I kind of struggled with him, tried to push him off of me, and I managed to get out of his grasp enough to take a few steps, and I kind of curved around and went into the closet. And by the time I made it into the closet, he had me by the hair, and what felt like he was just wailing on me, but in a really sloppy way, like hitting the back of my head, and kind of wrestled me down to the floor. I mean, it felt to me like I didn't even have a fair shot, because I wasn't facing him or looking at him. I was walking away from him. Or else, I would have at this point even I would have tried to defend myself more, but I didn't. I kind of felt like it didn't see it coming, and he just wrestled me down to the ground. And I remember he was screaming at me. I mean, like really screaming loud. And what I remember of that is trying to get up and him kind of wrestling me back down, and at one point put his knee on my back. It was kind of like kneeling on my back. And I just had this struggle with him. And I look at him, and he's still got his glasses on. I just remember looking at him and thinking that was so... he just looked like he hadn't been through anything. He still had his glasses on, sunglasses. And he was screaming at me that he hated me, that it was over, that he didn't want to marry me. he was disgusted. He was disgusted. He made this mistake. It was a big mistake, and everyone hated me. And I remember crying on the floor. Just, more than anything, I was heartbroken. I thought maybe he was serious. I thought maybe, God, he doesn't love me. Maybe he really feels this way. It broke my heart. Broke my heart. I wanted to marry him so bad. This is the man I loved, you know. Yes, it was awful at times, but I loved him and what he was saying.
Objection, Your Honor, non-responsive.
Overruled.
What he was saying to me hurt just as bad as anything else. I just remember that he left me on the closet floor, and as embarrassing as it is to say, I went up to him at some point. I don't know how much time had passed. He was sitting at the piano in the living room of the hotel room that we had. I know it may be hard to understand. It's hard for me to hear myself say, but I just wanted it to stop. I wanted things to just be okay. And I just sat next to him on the piano, and I just leaned my head on his shoulder, and of course I was mad, and felt it was horrible what he'd done. But on the other hand, I wanted us to be okay. I could just put I could put the physical stuff in a box, and I just kept going back on how much I loved this person. So just put my makeup on and went to the premiere with him and walked a red carpet with him. And I remember in the car checking my phone obsessively for pictures because my dress was backless. Of all times to have a backless dress. Then I was just looking at pictures of us on the red carpet. It was surreal because I was checking for bruises and making sure that there would be no marks on me, and we just looked like this other thing on this red carpet when it was just... It was not like that. It's embarrassing. It's hard to... I'm sure it's hard to...
Objection, Your Honor, non-responsive.
All right, I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
I'm going to take you to February, the next month, 2015, to your wedding. Can you please tell the jury about your wedding?
So we get married in Los Angeles. I get a sense that it was a wedding, running around Los Angeles. I was getting married that day, and I remember running around I went to therapy and, got ready, and Johnny and I met at the penthouses downtown, and I wore a white dress and a veil. I had bobby pinned in my hair. And I walked out of that penthouse. I met with Johnny in the hallway, and I I thought he looked so handsome, and he seemed happy, and I felt we were making the right decision. I was so looking forward to having this. I thought we'd get married and we'd have stability, safety. So we get in the car, we get into actually Johnny's car, and for the second time since I've known Johnny, he drove drove us in his truck. It was weird being in the car with him alone. You know, we didn't have that. And we drove to his mom's house, and a justice of the peace arrived, looking kind of surprised. And she married us in the living room of his mother's house, Betty Sue, with our families together. My best friend, my mom, his mom. We ate food with the kids. They were there. And we had a wonderful evening, and then got up and got on the plane either the next morning or the day after, and flew to Johnny's Island. And we had what we had planned for the better, we had planned for the better part of a year or so, maybe 8 months, for this 3-day wedding on his island with our close friends, about 12 people, maybe 15 people. We had these little houses built, like not tents, but not houses, these little, for the guests. We had them built and designed on the island, and we had people come out, and it was magic. I was marrying the love of my life. It was complicated, but I thought it was the love of my life. And we had our friends and family out, and we had this 3-day event. The first night of which was supposed to be he and I separate with our relative party, so me with the bridal party and him with his fellas. The bridal party, we had planned to do a cuddle puddle, have mushrooms and drink wine, and have our own girl party separate, and then the next day have the wedding festivities. We were going to be married around sunset, and on this beach, not the beach that Johnny had named for me, although I think we originally planned on having the ceremony on that beach, but it was changed at some point to the other beach, and we walked down the beach aisle, and said our vows, and the sunset behind us, and we took pictures with our family, and we shot the bird, meaning the middle finger, up at the paparazzi helicopter plane circling around us while we were on the altar. And we danced and celebrated. And then I left the island because I had to go work.
When you say you left the island and you had to go to work, what were you working on that required that?
I was filming The Danish Girl in London, which is the film that I had been in London for in January when Johnny was hallucinating on the phone with me. I was there doing kind of prep work for that film.
And what, if any, film was Mr. Depp going to at that point?
Well, the plan, why we did the wedding when we did it, is because he had always had this commitment to do Pirates 5. And he was going to shoot that in Australia, and I was going to shoot The Danish Girl. And I started The Danish Girl in early February, and he was going to fly out mid-February to Australia. So his movie was going to take the majority of the year, meaning until August. So maybe longer, so that the plan was to do it when we did it so that we didn't have to wait until the fall of the following year. So shortly after I left, Johnny returned to Los Angeles, and then flew from Los Angeles on to Australia to shoot P5, Pirates 5, excuse me.
Okay. And what was the plan for you when you finished with Danish Girl?
The plan was always for me to wrap on my movie and then come and join him in Australia, where he was filming P5.
Okay, and when approximately was that?
That was March 3rd.
March 3rd that you wrapped, that you finished with Danish Girl?
I believe, I can't recall the exact date, but I believe it was around that time, yes.
Okay, and then tell the jury, where did you fly to get to Australia? How long of a turnaround was it for you to get to Australia?
It was about 24-hour, I think it's about 24 hours. I could be mistaken on the exact amount of time, but I remember it's quite a distance from London. I was filming in London, he was filming in Australia. Effectively, you have to fly 12 hours, stop, get on a different plane, and fly, I think, around the same amount of time, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. So when you arrived, before you finished wrapping with Danish Girl and were heading out shortly before, what, if any, communications did you and Mr. Depp have?
Well, at first it was great. Even though we were separated, it was so hard to leave leave right after you get married, especially considering that in Johnny and I's relationship, it was always so much worse when I went away to work. That's when problems started. So that was hard, but we communicated pretty consistently, and it was positive until it started to change. I got the sense that he thought I was sleeping with the director, and then it was with the actor I was filming with.
Who was the actor you were filming with?
Eddie Redmayne.
Okay.
I was not that it mattered, but I could do my best to field the accusations, and then they would kind of subside, and I thought things were okay. And one day, right before I'm supposed to fly to Australia, he, I think it was the night before I was supposed to leave to go to Australia, he calls my hotel room, apparently. I had a sense that the phone was ringing. I think I was in the shower at the time, but not much time had passed, and I get a knock on the door, and it was someone from the hotel that I was staying at. The hotel staff had been sent up to the room because Johnny...
Objection calls for hearsay and speculation.
I'll sustain the objection.
So don't tell what the staff said. What happened next?
Then I start communicating with Johnny.
And when you say started, I mean, was he on the phone? Did you call him? What happened here?
He called the room and then my cell phone, and then once I was on the cell phone, he was accusing me of not being in my room, so he called the room, and I had to prove that I was in the room because by answering the phone. And we had a lengthy kind of circular conversation about where I was and why I didn't answer the phone, why I didn't answer the phone immediately. He didn't sound like he was connected to reality. It just didn't seem like, to me, it seemed like a previous pattern. I was unsure what to make of it because he wasn't right in front of me, but he was accusing me of what it seemed like is having, I guess, an affair or a reason to not be in the room that I got a sense from him was, cheating or, that I was hiding something and why I wasn't answering the phone, and hence why I got the knock on the door. That was right before I left.
So before you headed to Australia, what, if any, requests did you make of Mr. Depp for him to get you MDMA?
That's ridiculous.
Why is that ridiculous?
would never, since that time I learned my lesson the hard way on the plane to Russia, I would never do MDMA with him. I'm asking for a problem in that case. Like that, I would never do that.
Okay. So you flew to Australia and met with Mr. Depp, right? And I'm going to, can we pull up defendants 1809? And Your Honor, these are some of the pictures that Mr. King, you may recall, was testifying earlier, said he had on his phone.
Okay.
And then those were given, so.
So I don't have these, is what you're saying. Okay, that's fine. 1809.
Correct. I'm just going to show you a few pictures. Amber, do you recognize, and I realize you didn't take this photo. I'm going to move the admission of it, though, Your Honor.
Any objection to 1809?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
All right, 1809 in evidence, you can publish.
And let me pass one up and give one to the other side. We tried to, given the strangeness of this. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Amber, do you recognize this photo?
I do.
And could you tell the jury what this is?
That is the driveway leading up to the house that Johnny was renting while shooting Pirates 5.
Okay. And then I'm going to make this, try to make this a little faster, and I'm going to go 1810.
Ms. Bretterhoff, if you have a series of photos, if you want to
Yes.
show counsel what they are, maybe we can get them entered all together, and then you could just
Yes,
go on with your questions.
yes, in fact. And these are all, I will represent, ones that we got from Mr. King.
All right, if you want to take a look at them.
And, Your Honor, if I may just approach, I'll give you the whole stack.
Okay,
too.
that's
That might
fine.
look like- We can keep that up if you want. By the way, Amber, do you see those kangaroos in there?
When I was pulling up to the house, I saw kangaroos as well.
And this was a pretty big driveway.
It was a
I
pretty
don't think I
ice.
have any objection. Sorry.
No objection to any of them?
I don't believe so, Your Honor.
But make sure you look through them all, too. I just want to make sure, because
Thank
I'll
you,
go ahead
Your
and read them into the record once you have looked through them all. And then
Thank you, Your Honor. I've reviewed them. I have no objection to
All
any
right.
of these photographs.
So we'll enter into evidence defendants 1804, 1805, 1806, 1807, 1808, 1810, 1811, 1812, 1814, 1815, 1816, 1817, 1819, 1820, 1821, 1825, 1827, 1828, 1829, 1830, 1831, 1834, 1835, 1837, 1838, 1839, 1840, 1841, and 1842. Did I get them all?
I believe so.
I want to make sure more than believe, so we agree that's all in evidence? Okay. They're all in evidence. So as long as you're just going to be referencing those photos, we'll keep it on
We're
for
going
you
to
to
keep it
publish
moving.
them.
Thank you, Your Honor. Appreciate it. Okay. Whose home was this in Australia?
It was I think like a a well-known sportsman, racing cars or something of that nature.
Okay. Let's, Michelle, if you can pull up 1810. Is this another picture from that home?
Yes, that looks like it's the view from the bathroom.
Okay. And then let's go, Michelle, if you can pull up 1811. Is that a picture of the home?
That's the house, yes.
Okay. And let's go to 1812. And
that's a view from the living room. It opened into a lagoon.
okay. And then let's look at 1813. I guess that's just another view, little over of the swimming pool, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then let's do one more, 1814. This is inside the house?
Yes.
Okay. And you can look to the back here where I'm making some, what if anything is that back there?
That's the kitchen.
Okay, and this is the dining room, and this is on the main level?
What we're looking at is the dining room table on the main level with the kitchen in the background.
Okay. Thank you. Now, I want you to take this jury through your experience, what happened in Australia once you arrived there.
Well, I was nervous because of the conversations that I had with him before I left, and then in transit I stopped in Dubai and spoke to him too. So I was a little nervous, but he indicated to me that he wanted me to come. He said I miss my wife at the end of the phone call that we had in the airport. I called him from Dubai. And he said, I miss my wife. I felt, okay, safe to, it's good. And I missed him so much, that's all I wanted to do is see my new husband. I flew in, I arrived early. I walked into the bedroom. I was so excited to see him. And he was so, like, he had lost a ton of weight. So I just knew something was up. And he kind of quickly, kissed me and kind of, we had some interaction. It was brief. He was leaving to go work. He had to work that day. But then after the plan was he would come back, which he did in the evening, and then he was supposed to have a 3-day weekend, a long weekend. So he comes back that evening, and the chef had kind of prepared some things for the fridge, mashed potatoes, I think spinach as well. There were some steaks in the fridge, but he had kind of prepped some of the sides. And I was looking forward to having this kind of, our style at-home date. We'd just been, we're a new married couple. We hadn't seen each other for basically a month after getting married. And I start dinner and am happy to see him. And at some point early in that evening, he pulls out a bag of MDMA. I asked him what it was, and he told me it was MDMA. And I was surprised because at the time, that was, there was no question mark as to how I would respond to that, or so I thought. It's like, why would you even think that that's okay? He had already gotten clean and sober. I was, touch and go, but for the wedding, he was drinking Beck's. I think at some point he did have wine on the island, but it wasn't an issue, right? Just moved ahead. So I was surprised that he would even pull out this bag and, well, frankly, not hide it from me. And he kind of seemed to suggest that we should do it together. And I was like, absolutely not. Like, I just got here. I want to see you. I want to spend time with you. It was the exact opposite of what I expected, what I wanted. And it just seemed delusional at the time to me that he would even suggest this to be something that I could participate in with him. If you had been through what I had been through at that point, it's crazy. And at some point, he drinks in front of me. At first, I think it was like a Malbec or a wine or something. And I remember we hadn't, it kind of started an argument. And that was upstairs in that room that we just looked at a picture of, by the sunflowers. That's more or less where we were standing, just closer to the kitchen. And we get in an argument, and I shove past him, just stomp off. And he grabs me. We have an argument about me walking away, and am I walking out of this? And in my head, I was like, I actually wasn't thinking of leaving yet, but that would later be going through my mind. We had a brief interaction, and I don't remember the exact sequence of things. I wish I did. I have a lot of flashes. It gets a little bit more confusing from my ability to recall everything in a linear way a little later on as things got crazier. But for this part, the first night, what I distinctly remember is at one point, I don't think I had gotten very far, or maybe I came back into the room, but when he shoved me, I went flying across these parakeet floors. I mean, just skidding across these floors. And I remember thinking it just looked so easy for him to throw me around like that, I just slid, screeching my skin against this beautiful wooden floor. And we had another argument that was a spin-off from that. It was just kind of this on-off sort of thing that I remember eventually in this interaction, he shoves me up against the fridge. He has me by the throat, and he just was holding me there by my throat. And I wondered if it was the drugs. I wondered if it was him. It hadn't, in my recollection, it hadn't been that long. He has me up against the throat, just kind of bashing me against the wall next to the fridge. We're kind of moving in that area. And at some point, I'm in his face. And I don't know if he had let go of my neck or loosened my grip, but I remember slapping him across the face, screaming at him. He's screaming at me. I got my hand free when he tried to grab me when I walked off. I stormed off. I slammed the door upstairs. I don't know if it was in that instance or if it was in a later one that I eventually barricaded the door. It wouldn't stop him from coming in. He could come in the other doors. There's a back door, there's a patio, but at least I'd hear it. And this is March 2015. By this time, I'm being medicated by his doctor. He's giving me anti-anxiety meds, giving me had already tried to give me antidepressants. They didn't work for obvious reasons, I hope. I wasn't sleeping. I had insomnia. I'd wake up with panic attacks. I needed to sleep, but my ability to do so was really, really compromised at this point. And I kept thinking that I just wanted to hear him or know if he came in so I could be aware, so I could be ready for what was going to come in with him. And at some point I go back downstairs. I don't really know at what point I gave up and stayed behind my barricaded door, but I managed to go to sleep. I took some sleeping pills. I woke up, and when I came downstairs, he was still up. He confirmed when I asked him that he had not slept. He had not eaten, so I tried to get him to eat. We get in an argument. He was accusing me of Eddie Redmayne, and by this point, he thought I was working with Billy Bob Thornton on the movie I had just shot, but I had already worked with him a year earlier. But he was very upset about him and the gentleman that invited me to a concert in London. My co-star, he was upset about these people, even though I had done that movie a year prior.
Who was that?
It was Billy Bob Thornton, Jim Sturgis, and Eddie Redmayne that he was upset about.
And let me just stop you for a moment. Have you seen Mr. Depp take any drugs by this point?
Oh, yeah. Sorry if I left that out. That when we had the argument about the MDMA, he suggested to me that it wasn't on the no-fly list, like it wasn't on the no list. That was his argument. That was his defense. Like, this isn't the... You didn't say I couldn't have this. And over and over again, Johnny told me I wasn't the reason he was getting sober, but I was the reason he was staying sober. Life and all this stuff. It wasn't like it wasn't my job to police him, but I kind of ended up being in that situation, it seemed like, in his mind, when he would express that to me. So he took a handful of pills, and I didn't count how many, but when I came back downstairs, I did the math on the amount that was left, and I think it was either 8 or 10, I can't recall as I sit here now, either 8 or 10 pills of MDMA.
That he had taken or that were left?
I remember we had a conversation about the amount that he took. So I remember saying, you
Objection,
took all
hearsay.
Okay, I'll sustain the objection.
Okay. There were only a few left in the bag, so I think it was what he took. And I said, Johnny,
Objection, hearsay.
He confirmed that he took that amount and that he could take that amount.
And what amount?
At this point, there were 10. He had taken 10, 8 or 10. I can't recall.
And when you say at this point, is that the first night? Is that the second day?
This is the second day. This is after I've already fallen asleep for the night in the room upstairs. Come back downstairs. He was still awake.
Okay, please continue with that second day.
He was accusing me of being mean to his sister. He was accusing me of not liking his sister. Something about the wedding. I was trying to put out that fire, as you will. I was trying to say, no. First of all, I'm not filming with Billy Bob. No, I wasn't filming with Jim Sturgis. Yes, I filmed with Eddie Redmayne, but he was a lovely gentleman.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Let's not offer to prove the truth of the matter.
Overruled.
Thank you.
And then when it came up with his sister, he was accusing me of kind of having this animosity with Christy. I tried to defend myself, explaining why her and I had kind of become cold to one another. I don't know how else to describe it, because we never had any sort of direct interaction that was negative. We never had any sort of confrontation or anything, but I did my best to explain to him what I could answer to that accusation. And at one point he, I mentioned that, well, I can't say what I mentioned. He, as a result of that phone call, picks up the phone and calls his agent I don't know why, still to this day. He calls a few people. I don't know who's on the other line. I just heard his side of it, and he's screaming at them. I got a sense that it was money, that he felt people had been stealing money from him, and that the studio had been ripping him off, and that he was calling himself like a whore, or he had been whored out. He seemed like he was upset, but I did not, at this point, this is maybe early evening, it was before the sun went down on the second day. I remember he took the phone at one point and called my divorce attorney. I had, at some point prior to this, got a divorce attorney, or not a divorce attorney, a domestic relations attorney to do a post-nup, because we got married in February, and there was never any mention or talk from Johnny about a prenup, but I had had interactions with his sister, and so I thought, okay, I'll get a lawyer and let's do a post-nup. When Johnny found out about that, or when I reminded him of that in Australia, he went outside and called my divorce attorney and fired her and said the only way out of this was death. Again. And I heard that already at this point, March 2015, probably 25 times. So he's screaming at her. He calls his agents. I hear him talking incoherently, screaming incoherently at my lawyer and his agent. He comes back inside, and I genuinely didn't know if he was still mad at me or if it was about me at all. I didn't know. It didn't seem like it was connected to reality at all. At some point shortly after that, I have been saying to Johnny, you need to sleep. Let's eat some dinner, baby. Let's relax. Please, like, calm down. In my head, I was thinking that it would genuinely change if he just got some sleep. He needed to sleep it off. He needed to come down off the drugs. Clearly, the combination of what he had taken pill-wise with whatever else he was hiding from me was not good. I had recognized that sort of delusion. I had recognized that sort of unattached to reality rage. I had recognized the patterns of those kind of loops where he's yelling about things that aren't even being discussed or talked about. I knew already that he just needed to sleep it off, clean up, sober up. And I thought we could. I remember I went to the fridge. I got out the steaks so that they would be ready to cook. And I got out some of the food I was going to put together for dinner. I went upstairs. I don't know if I came back down in my nightgown at that point or if that was shortly after, but the next thing I remember is coming downstairs and looking for him. We had an interaction that I can't really describe. It didn't make a lot of sense to me. He was just belligerent, throwing things, screaming at me. And I realized I was back on the chopping block. I realized it was back. I realized that the arrows were pointed at me again. And I tried to defend myself. I was explaining, trying to say that.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
It was not offered to prove the truth of the matter. She hasn't even said it yet, but try not to say what you're saying unless it needs it for context or something. Try to say what he's saying.
I'll sustain the objection.
Okay.
He was just belligerent. I don't know how to describe to you because it wasn't making sense. It wasn't making sense. I don't know how. I don't know how the immediate next string of the next part of the violence actually even initiated. But again, he has me up against the wall, and I remember this time he slams me up against the wall hard. I mean, I hit my head hard. And this is a wall next to I say kitchenette, but it's more of a bar. I remember there were these cooling fridges, and I remember kind of being slammed up against those. I remember pushing him off of me. calling, or the slut, the fat ass. I remember a lot of name calling. I said,
Had he been drinking by this time?
he was drinking.
Calls for speculation and leading.
I'll sustain as to leading.
What, if any, drinks had you observed Mr. Depp have by this time?
Well, I had already seen him drink right in front of me. He took a big swig out of a wine bottle upstairs right in front of me as in a gesture of, like, looked right at me and took a big swig out of it as a, like a show for, like, did it right in my face to make a point. And then when I came downstairs, he was drinking from the, I don't know what kind of liquor. I remember there was another bottle open, and I was wondering why he was drinking both. But at some point, he had me up against the wall next to the cooling fridges, and I remember slamming my head up against the thing. He had me by the neck, squeezing my neck, and it got really nasty. It went from like, oh, no one likes you, no one likes me, everyone warned me about you. That's what it was. He started to tell me that everyone had warned him about me, and that he wished he had never married me, wish he had never met me. No one liked me. It sounds childish, but I remember feeling really hurt. And then at some point, I shoved him hard to get him off me. And he shoved me back, and he said, "You want to go, little girl?" I couldn't, as I sit here today, tell you if that happened before he choked me up against the wall, but at some point, I am in a struggle with him where I'm holding his shirt lapel, and he kind of just flings me, for lack of a better way to describe it, throws me across the room. I land on a games table. It's like a ping pong table. And I don't know if I was holding on to him or if he pursued me separate, but he gets on top of me on the games table and is just whacking me in the face, like repetitive. We struggle on the games table. I don't know how we get up. I don't know if he pulls me up. I wish I could tell you, but we were in this struggle down in this games room by the bar. And we had this conversation about the drinking, or argument about the drinking, and he holds up this bottle to me, and I'm saying, did you drink this whole thing? Something stupid, focusing on this detail, and he is telling me that I can't control him anymore, and that if I really wanted to try, take it. And then he's like taunting me to take the bottle from him. If I really want him to stop, why don't I take it from him? Go on. Kept saying, go on, and kind of gesturing with the bottle towards me. And like he does that 2 or 3 times. I reach for it, he'd revoke it, kind of laugh at me. And he's holding out the bottle. I think like maybe the 3rd time or so I get a hold of it. I pick it up and I slam it down on the ground right in between us. There's a tile floor, a white tile floor. And I smashed the bottle on the floor. And that really set him off. So stupid. Sorry. It was like a light bulb switch went off. And he starts screaming. I don't know if he backhanded me or hit me normally. I don't really recall, but I remember it sent me down to the ground. I remember by the time I picked myself off the floor, I stand up. He's got a bottle in his hand, and he threw it at me. It missed, thankfully, but I kind of pulled myself back into the bar area. I don't know how much time passed, but at some point he had a broken bottle up against my face, neck area by my jawline, and he told me he'd carve up my face. I don't know at what point in the evening. I couldn't tell you what sequence-wise when that happened, but it was terrifying. It wasn't the first time he said that to me. He said that to me on the plane as well. But this time he was holding a broken bottle to me. I honestly don't remember if I threw anything in his direction. I don't think I did. I just remember him having me by the nightgown. I remember him flailing me, throwing me around. I'm flailing. This is after there were some bottles broken on the floor. I think this is actually after, again, forgive me, I wish I could remember the sequence, but it's flashes. He's throwing these bottles at me. I remember retreating. There were also cans, like soda cans, beer or soda cans, and they're coming at me one after the other, and I keep pulling myself into the bar area. There's a bar behind me in like a, I don't know, like an L shape. He's standing in the only way you can exit, so I'm kind of trapped in front of this sink, surrounded by bar on three sides with him in front of me-ish, kind of front off to the left, and he's throwing these bottles one after the other, and I can feel glass breaking behind me. I remember feeling one of them go by my head really fast. I mean, a real velocity. I remember being terrified. I remember I couldn't move. I couldn't go anywhere. I eventually, he ran out of things to throw. I think that's how I moved myself towards the exit. And I believe that's most likely when we got kind of in this struggle by the bar area, because I remember my feet slipping on the tile as he was slamming me from the wall to the countertops. At one point, he has me up against the wall, and he's punching the wall. He had my, nightgown, and it kind of ripped it off my chest. I remember at one point he's teasing me, taunting me that he has my breasts in his hands. My nightgown came completely off. It was ripped off of me. So I was naked, and I'm slipping around on this tile and trying to get my footing. And I remember slipping on this tile. Glass was underneath me, and I remember just trying to get my footing. I felt really destabilized and felt really vulnerable. I'm naked, and he's flinging me around, and at some point, I'm up against the wall, and he's screaming at me that he fucking hates me, that I ruined his life. I remember I ruined his life over and over. And he starts punching the wall next to my head, holding me by the neck. I get free from him. I kind of step back from him, and it's like his energy shifted to the phone. There's a wall-mounted phone on the wall next to where my head was, and he went from punching the wall to like realizing there was a phone there, and he picked up the phone and he's screaming. He's like at the top of his lungs, screaming, "I fucking hate you! I fucking hate you! You ruined my fucking life!" And screaming at the top of his lungs, he picks up the phone and starts bashing the phone against the wall where I was just being held. And I remember kind of having some distance on what was happening and watching him do this. And it was like his energy had shifted, and I was that phone all of a sudden. And he was just over and over again smashing this phone into the wall, over and over again, screaming at me. And I was watching the phone every single time he pulled his hand back. It was just breaking into pieces. I remember thinking this phone is disappearing. He was smashing it to smithereens, just going into the wall. And at some point, he's on top of me, no phone, but screaming the same thing. I fucking hate you. You ruined my fucking life. I'm on the countertop. It had me by the neck, and he felt like he was on top of me, and I'm looking at him in his eyes, and I don't see him anymore. I don't see him anymore. It wasn't him. It was black. I've never been so scared in my life. It was black. I couldn't see him. And he was looking at me, and I was trying to get through to him. I was trying to say to him in some way that it was me. I was trying to get through to Johnny, and I couldn't see him. I couldn't see him at all. And my head was bashing against the back of the bar, and I couldn't breathe. And I remember trying to get up, and I was slipping on the glass. My feet were slipping. My arms were slipping on the countertops. And I remember just trying to get up so I could breathe.
Picture. Please tell the jury.
Johnny passed out on the island.
Picture. Please.
I know it may be hard to understand. Clean up, sober up. And I thought, I'm sorry, Debbie. And I remember just not wanting to move because I didn't know if it was broken. I didn't know if the bottle that he had inside me was broken. I couldn't feel it. I didn't feel pain. I didn't feel pain. I didn't feel anything. I didn't want it. I looked around and I saw so much broken glass that I didn't know if he would know. I didn't know if he would know if it was broken or not. And I just remember thinking, please, God, please, I hope it's not broken. I don't know how that ended. I don't know how I got off the countertop. I just remember it being in the bathroom. I remember retching. I remember the sound my voice was making. I remember I lost control of my bladder. I remember just retching. I remember there was blood on the floor. I got up at some point. I don't know how that night ended. I don't remember what happened. I don't remember. I have a memory of him begging me not to leave. I remember going outside the front door. I remember him coming out to the front area, but I don't remember. If that was before or after this, I don't remember. I just have that memory. I remember taking a bunch of sleeping pills Not a bunch, like 2, which is a lot for me. I remember falling asleep, or I don't remember falling asleep, but I know I fell asleep because I woke up the next day. I assume it was late morning. I could hear him downstairs. I could hear Marilyn Manson music, not in person. I could hear the music. Maybe he said it was Marilyn, or maybe I could recognize it. I don't remember, but I became aware of it. That's what I was hearing. It was blaring. It became clear, obvious to me when I walked downstairs. He was still up. He hadn't gone to sleep again. I walked downstairs and I saw this brown on the walls going down the stairs. And the brown on the walls became clear, like lettering. And then it was obvious it was dried blood. He had written down this, that we had a spiral staircase, like white cream walls. There was blood on the carpet. I could see blood drips. I thought it was from my arms or feet, but it was drips. So that plus the wall writing, I saw this brown letters on the wall, and then realized that he was trying, that it was meant to be a message, but it was incoherent. I saw what looked like my name, but I really couldn't make out most of the rest of the message walking down the stairs. I saw a bird in the house. I thought that was surreal. I went down to the main level where my painting studio was, and I had some canvases out. It was in the living room area. And by the time I got down to the bottom of the stairs, the dried blood had been kind of taken over by paint. It was blue, navy blue paint, and then brown paint. And then it was, on the walls, on the lampshades, pillowcases of the sofa cushions. There was blood. In the painting studio, my canvases had been covered with what looked like just brown, blue, green, red mess. It was just a mess. There was a painting that had, a painting that the owners had that had, like giant penis on it, and some other things. There was a table overturned, a bunch of broken glass on that floor. I walked downstairs where I heard the music coming from, and that's where blaring this music. He was in the study, which is by the bar games table area off to the side, and it was just glass and blood and broken windows and just it looked like a mess. The table was collapsed, and I walked into the study. There was a couple unbroken empty bottles. I remember wondering where they came from. And he just looked, he wasn't there anymore. He wasn't there. It wasn't Johnny. He was standing at the office desk. He had his hand wrapped in this like rags or bandana rags, and I think he took them down or somehow showed me, and he said, "Look what you made me do. I did this for you," something to that effect. And I kind of put together, it was covered in paint, and I put together that's like he was using his finger. I quickly became aware that that's what he was using as a paintbrush, even though there was lots of paintbrushes around. And we didn't have any sort of like coherent conversation, as you can imagine. I figured out he was missing a finger. He kind of held it up, and I said, "What did you do? When? Like, what did you do? When?" And I realized in my head that there had been many hours since this probably happened, assuming that that was happened with the phone. And in any case, I knew it had been way too long, that he had this blood, that he was bleeding, and I said, I'm going to call 911 if you don't call Jerry now. I still don't recall which of us called Jerry Judge, his security. At some point we went upstairs. He came upstairs, but he went up to the third floor while I was in the main floor, the entry-level floor. I went to make him a cup of coffee because he was demanding more Red Bull. And I was thinking, that's probably not a good idea. I don't know why coffee would be so much better, but in my head it was. I thought maybe, I don't know, sober him up, or I don't know. Help was coming, though, and I remember I made him coffee. As soon as I handed it to him, he threw it at the TV and started screaming again. It was like back to square one. Shortly after that, security arrives. I don't know how long, maybe a few seconds or minutes went by, not long, but they kind of find Johnny, or Johnny finds them walking out of the front door, and they were trying to figure out what was going on, and as they were kind of looking at him and trying to figure out what the heck was going on, Johnny took his penis out of his pants and started trying to pee or peeing outside of the house, saying that he had more messages for me. And this is in front of security. And they kind of just like looked at each other and looked at him and kind of laughed, but kind of half, played it off and corralled him. It was how it looked. It looked like corralling a wild animal back into the house with his penis still out of his pants, peeing or trying to pee. That's what he was indicating. And he went to the wall of the house, and I remember him standing at the wall trying to leave me more, saying he had more information for me. He was gonna leave me more messages, more information for me. It made no sense. And Jerry Judge, his security, and one of the nurses, shortly after, I think they put me in the theater room, but shortly after, I remember talking to one of the nurses, and she was trying to give me drugs to sedate
Objection,
me.
Your Honor. Hearsay.
Trying to give her drugs. She didn't say anything. Thank you. Keep going.
And I just remember crying and rejecting what they were trying to give me, and fighting with them about how much they were trying to give me. I felt like I needed to figure out what was happening with my life, what was happening with Johnny. I didn't know if he was okay. I didn't know. I actually had no idea, could this be something he could die from? If anything, just the drugs and the alcohol. I mean, that alone, I didn't, I just remember being scared and being in this theater room, this dark theater room, and not knowing what the heck was going on. And I eventually was taken up to my room by one of the nurses, and I'm sorry, Debbie, and or suggesting I go up to my room. I went up to my room, and I took a quarter of what she was trying to get me to take, and I eventually fell asleep. I came back downstairs to look for my phone, which Johnny had picked up before security came in. He picked up my phone and said, "We're going to get to the bottom of this." He wasn't making any sense at the time. Understandably, just different. Nothing made sense. But he picked up my phone and was saying, I'm going to prove this. We're going to get to this. We're going to get to the proof of this. Something to that effect. I don't remember his exact words. And he pushed record on my phone. I didn't actually at the time think that he had done that. I had no idea, but I did know that I didn't have my phone when I woke up and went downstairs to get it. it was dead. It was sitting out on the dining room table by where Jerry Judge was sitting. Jerry Judge was on the phone and talked to me, and I went back up to bed, took more of this sedative, and fell asleep. And then I think the next day, went to the closet and took out the clothes that he hadn't painted on. I guess when he went back upstairs, he had just like, it looked like what he had done is dip his hand in a bucket of paint and just wiped it on my clothes. Just went, and he had picked up another portion of my clothes and put them in the bathtub. And I don't know if he added paint or if he just had touched them with paint, but it was this ugly navy blue brown paint. I packed what was packable, what hadn't been destroyed, and eventually left Australia with Ben King, who you met on the way there.
Let me stop you there because I want to ask you some more questions about those 3 days, and then we can talk about Ben King and going home. So, do you recall what bottle Mr. Depp was drinking from and then had that back and forth with you and you threw on the ground?
Objection, Your Honor. Compound leading.
Sustained.
Do you recall what the bottle was?
No, I don't.
Okay. Do you recall whether it was wine or liquor?
It was liquor. The wine was upstairs.
Okay. Do you recall what color it was?
Well, I believe it was white, clear, but I can't be certain. I think it was clear.
Do you remember whether it had a handle on it or not?
No, it was a normal bottle. I remember because he was holding it like this and gestured to me to take it, and I did try to reach for the bottle. It was a normal size, but for the life of me, I can't remember what brand.
Okay. When you woke up that third morning and came out of your room, what, if any, food did you see?
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Objection, Your Honor. Leading.
Overruled.
There was mashed potatoes smeared all over the bedroom door, on the wall, and various places. But I remember opening the door and being really confused at first as to what it was. Had little specks of green in it, I assumed to be spinach. And throughout the house, there was food rubbed in places, just countertops, walls, doors, as I mentioned. And later that evening, I found the raw meat that I had left out, the steak, all over the house. There were pieces of it. It was cut up. And he had ripped my nightgown into pieces, into shreds, and wrapped the meat up, wrapped the steak pieces up with my nightgown. It was this really beautiful burgundy silk nightgown that had this black lace trim. I ironically got it from Dr. Kipper for a wedding gift. And it was wrapped, I continued to find it throughout the rest of the time that I was in the house in Australia. There was pieces of it in the microwave, pieces of it in the produce drawer, in the closet drawer. Just raw meat wrapped up in my nightgown, as well as the smeared food on the walls. It was bizarre.
What, if anything, do you recall seeing on any mirrors?
Oh, he had written on the bathroom mirrors in the bedroom, and I believe he had. There was another mirror. I just don't recall which bathroom it was in. I suppose it was the one that I went to, which is on the very bottom level, where I was retching, for lack of a better way to describe it. I think it was in that bathroom that he also wrote on that mirror as well.
What, if anything, do you recall?
In blood and paint, sorry.
I'm sorry. What, if anything, do you recall of any lampshades being written on?
Well, he wrote on messages to me things to the effect of go-getter, whore sort of thing, like that sort of language. But calling me easy, calling me a slut, calling me, like just things about ego and what a whore I was. But it was hard to make sense of it because it was clear he was just out of his mind. It was, he wrote on a back of a pillow in blood. And you can tell because it dries like in this ugly brown color. He wrote on the wall going downstairs. Like it took in fact, you could see where it looked like he had run out of blood because the messages became, the markings became clearly letters. And the letters kind of became, like I could see where he had clearly run out of blood or it wasn't bleeding enough and went and got paint. And then it became paint and blood. You could see both. You could see where he went back with it. Same with the mirrors. I could see where all the dried blood was. And then I could see a different set of markings with paint and some other material.
So I'm going to go back to the time in the bar, and I know this is very painful. Do you recall what Mr. Depp was saying to you when he had the bottle and was pushing it against your pubic bone?
He said that he would fucking kill me. I'll fucking kill you. He said it to me over and over again.